5.
Good afternoon, everybody, and apologies for our slightly late start. We've had some technical difficulties with tempests and floods and storms and everything else going on, but we are here in this virtual room, so welcome. And the first item on the agenda is to note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4. There are none. And what I would like to do is just go to Clive Moore to give us a brief summary of the fact that we are meeting remotely and that it is all legal, as we are subject to all of our recommendations today being published in the Member Information Service and subject to call-in. So we are, I understand, legal in that regard. If you could please confirm that, Clive.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that you are entitled to meet virtually in accordance with the local authorities, executive arrangements, meetings and access to information regulations 2012, that the agenda has been sent out as per normal, and that decisions can be made virtually as everyone is in the virtual domain, so to speak. Everything will be subject, as you say, to scrutiny. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. So item 2 on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence. As I've said, there are none because we're all present. And item 3 is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of anything on the agenda. Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. In respect of item 8, whilst the interest isn't prejudicial and certainly isn't pecuniary, I've been closely involved with this project for a long time. It actually sits in my county council division, so I'm trying to facilitate it with regards to highways, access, etc. So I have close connections to the project. I suppose I ought to mention I'm a hockey player, so may, if my body survives, get to benefit from the pitch one day, but I'm not sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. And of course, all of our involvements in a variety of different organisations across the district are all either included in our declarations of interest or in our outside body representations. But what we are really concerned about in these meetings is our possible involvement in executive processes or in decision-making capacities in those organisations. Item 4 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the panel held on the 25th of October 2021, which seems like an awful long time ago. But colleagues, are you happy with the minutes? If I can have a hand, please. Or a green tick will suffice. Thank you. Thank you. To consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business, I have none. To receive representations from members of the council on the applications before us, I have not received any. Councillor Hillier, Councillor Belsey, no, thank you. Corporate grant scheme, community and economic development grants. Can we move to that item, please? Emma, I think you are muted. There we go. No, sorry, you're still muted. Can't hear you. Okay, it appears that Emma Sheridan has had to leave the meeting, and she'll rejoin us hopefully with a renewed connection and a bit of volume, and she won't be mute as she appeared to be previously. No, you're still muted. Sorry. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Super, sorry about that. Right, we just so
thank you for persevering.
no problem, no problem. So this report outlines for the panel the 8 applications that we've had for this grant fund in the current period. All of the projects, as is often the way with these things, are all perfectly laudable and have merits across the board. However, only 3 of them actually fall within the criteria of this grant fund, as is explained in the paragraphs that follow in the report. Unfortunately, those grant applications in Table 2 do not meet the criteria for this grant programme, again, as is explained for each one in the criteria. However, obviously, officers in the community services team continue to work with those organisations to signpost them to other funding and to work with them to find other ways to continue those projects. The report also outlines the details of the Queen's Jubilee grant programme, which was agreed under Cabinet member decision a couple of weeks ago by Councillor Webster. The reason that was agreed that way rather than coming to this particular panel was to allow time for organisations to apply in good time and for an award to be made at the next Cabinet Grants panel to allow adequate planning for the events of the forthcoming Jubilee. We're quite happy to take questions on any of the applications or recommendations and indeed on the Jubilee programme if members have them.
Thank you. Councillor Hillier, do you have any questions?
I don't quite know how you read my mind. I was just reaching for the button. Thank you, Chairman.
I could see your hand was being raised.
2 questions, and I am supportive of the recommendations, Chairman, that's fine. With the Citizens' Advice and Community Champions, a great project, I just wondered whether the team have any idea about how many actual individuals that supports, how many that's likely to support. And then the other comment is more of a comment and me sticking my nose in with regards to Impact Foundation. I think these courses, obviously I've been involved with them locally, are excellent. And I just wondered whether they were designed to have some sort of follow-up, because we all know that we can go on a course and do something, but within a month or so, a lot of the knowledge gained is forgotten, and sometimes slightly later reinforcing, I can't remember the technical word, but I'm sure you know what I mean, is hugely beneficial in sealing in that knowledge. So those are my only questions, but I'm supportive of the recommendations. Thank you, Jen.
Good.
Okay, in answer to that, I'll take the second one first. So in terms of the impact project specifically, that is supported by our housing team as well. So those are families that services within the council are working with anyway. So with those individuals, there would be follow-up. But in terms of follow-up on grant allocations more generally, sorry, my dog. Grant applications more generally, we do an annual review and reporting back for all of our grant applications to ask what the impact was, how many people have been reached, and that comes forward to this panel annually as part of a review of the year. In terms of the Community Champions project, I'm not sure, Regina, if you know off the top of your head how many people we're working with at the moment on that?
Well, I mean, in terms of the language, the cafes, the idea is that it's going to enhance the the sort of engagement, but not everybody will want the existing champions. Not everybody will want to attend those language cafes. So there will be obviously a minimum floor. So we would expect, at least 8 to 10 people. But the idea is that they will build on that engagement and get more and more people in. So it'll be like a pilot phase, but there aren't at the moment. There is obviously a minimum number, especially if you're working with Aspire. They will expect to have a minimum number of people, but the idea is to keep increasing the numbers and keep broadening the engagement.
And in terms of the Community Champions project itself, which obviously we supported using our public health money and our COVID support money from the government. So far, we've had 180 stakeholders engage through that, and we have 20 active champions within different communities working with us on that. So it is the sort of project that builds slowly over time, and we have seen sort of that gradual increase as more communities and more community champions come to trust the process and want to come and work with us. It is a trust building process, so it does take time, but we are pleased that does seem to be increasing month on month, year on year, which is really, really positive. And the idea behind the community cafe or the language cafe that would work with that is that it not only gives somewhere for different communities to come and gather and to speak their own languages and things like that, but it also gives greater visibility to the diversity of communities that we have within Mid Sussex that I think quite a lot of people are maybe just not aware of. So it's about integration as well as supporting those communities as well.
Thank you. And just to add, Councillor Hillier, I've attended a few of the Community Champions meetings, and they are a very enthusiastic group of people. Started off as a small group, and as Emma has said, as trust is built, more and more people from very diverse backgrounds have attended those meetings. And my feeling is that if we are setting aside £5,000 in essence for that, and we can get 2 or 3 people into a position where they are more confident using English language and able to seek employment, therefore, that is a return on our investment. And I suspect there will be many more people who will benefit than 3 or 4. So can I take those as agreed, please, if you could indicate with a green tick. Thank you, that's unanimous. And if I could just make reference to those projects that have not been awarded grants, I am pleased to see that officers continue to work with those organisations, because as you said at the outset, Emma, they are all good organisations and they all perform valuable services in the community. I hope that they will be able to achieve funding from elsewhere in the short term, and perhaps they can come back to us in the future. And also, if we can move on to the Cabinet grant, the Jubilee Community Grants recommendation, which is before you on page 17. Is that agreed?
Chairman, I'm very sorry. I've just realised I should have actually declared an interest here, and it's probably one that precludes me, because I believe on Friday afternoon an application went in from the Betsford Community Partnership, which I chaired, to this fund. So I probably should be excluded from that. I do apologise. I didn't think about it earlier.
We are just agreeing the policy, the process this afternoon. So we aren't actually, it's really before you for noting, because it's been published in MIS previously. So it's really just to put it on the public record. Thank you, Councillor Belsey. Can we move on, please, to the corporate grant scheme release of section 106 contributions?
Yes, thank you. The covering report refers to 2 appendices. The first one is a summary of the 3 new applications that we've received and recommendations for funding. And then the second appendix is all the existing grants which are still being monitored, with an update on each one and a number of recommendations. So to start with the new applications, we've had one from Burgess Hill Bowls Club, which the recommendation is that it should be fully funded from section 106 receipts from a development which is next door. They want to install bifold doors to improve the ventilation and make it more attractive, which seemed like a positive development. So I recommended 100% full funding for that one. Shall I just continue and run through them all? And
if you could do the first 2, Elaine, and then we'll deal with the third one separately, please.
Yeah, okay. So then the second one is the Crawley Down Gatwick Football Club, who applied for just over 110,000 towards new dugouts to meet the FA standards, power supply and LED lighting upgrade to replace the existing noisy generator that they've got there, and also some ball stop fencing which will protect the new residents who've moved into the housing nearby. So those improvements are welcome. The only thing to note really about this application is that generally we require applicants to have security of tenure. At present, the football club don't have that. They've got a license from us to carry out the grounds maintenance and so on. So one of the recommendations of the award is that is reviewed. But regardless of the outcome of that review, which will be undertaken by the estates team, the recommendation to award the money still stands because it's actually a council-owned facility, and this is of benefit to the residents, and it's in our control. So I think then we need to look at the arrangements, maybe consider a lease or so on, but yes, and they may also need planning, of course, for the ball stop fencing. So I've recommended a slightly reduced amount to the amount they asked for, which is simply due to the amount of section 106 which is available. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you, Elaine. Questions or comments, colleagues? Councillor Belsey, you had your hand up first, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. So this, sorry, at the moment we're considering the Bowls Club and the Football Club, I think is what you're saying. Yeah, understood. Yeah. Thank you as well for the work on this, and I'm firstly pleased to see that I think there's the 100,000 or up to 100,000 comes from section 106 contributions, and just looking, that's all from within Crawley Down itself. So it's money due to buildings in Crawley Down going to Crawley Down, which I think will be welcomed by residents. It's just obviously we own the council building, or we own the building and the estate, and quite often I would have looked for perhaps the football club to have raised a little bit more money themselves for a project, as opposed to sort of looking for us to fund it to all ourselves, especially as they've got £30,000 membership income, etc. each year. And I was just, is it because it is council owned and so therefore we're getting the benefits that we would be willing on this occasion to try to fund more of it ourselves, or was there a question that maybe it would be reasonable to ask the football club to to demonstrate a little support themselves in raising funds to the project? I'd just be quite interested just to understand the balance between the two, please. Thank you.
Okay, fair question. Thank you, Elaine.
I think the fact is there is funding available, Section 106 receipts available, which are specifically allocated to this site and can't be used elsewhere. So it seems that as they had come forward with a viable scheme and they are making some kind of contribution towards it, that it was sensible to allocate that money to this project. And as it is our site, they are actually having some difficulty in raising the match funding, and I think we're going to have to work with them to put in an application, because in the same way that we require security of tenure, so do other funders. So I think we might have to come to some agreement with them about trying to raise match funding, and if we can raise more, then you know we could do.
Thank you. Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, my question was on similar lines to that of Councillor Bells. It was slightly different tack, because I'm slightly disappointed, surprised to see that there's no offer of any funding coming from the Football Association. Not least as some of these facilities, and you know this is probably a bit of a hobby horse of mine, is requirements from the Football Association because of the way that people involved with the sport sometimes conduct themselves. It means that the public purse is expected to pick up facilities costs. And I feel that that should really come from the FA purse, and just wondered whether they'd been approached. But on this occasion, I like Councillor Bells. I think it's great to be investing in sports facilities in Crawley Down. I think we know there's a demand, and I also noticed that the parish council unanimously supported it. But I would like the comment on the FA questions. It's something that irks me. Thank you.
It's a fair question, Councillor Hillier, because there are a number of different expectations and indeed requirements of the sporting bodies on community groups like this. So, Elaine.
I know they have spoken to the FA, and if you notice, the club fundraising is currently unsecured, and that will be the source of that funding. That's where they're intending to apply, but that is again where they're going to need our help because it is our facility. So yes, we will go to the FA. We will try and get the match funding from the FA, and potentially we may get more than the amount that they've put in here that they need to make up the difference. But I know they have had conversations, and that is a stumbling block for them, is the fact that we own the pitches.
Okay, I'm particularly pleased to see that some of the funding will go towards retiring the noisy generator, because that will not only make things more peaceful in the area, but it'll also I think it's a diesel generator, which can't be good. And I'm particularly pleased to see these applications coming forward because, as has been said, Section 106 money is a direct result of community benefit that comes from a lot of housing being built. So it is good to see something going back into the communities. And of course, a few years ago, Mid Sussex District Council also wrote off the mortgage for the loan for the community centre. So there's been a substantial amount of money put into that area, which I'm very pleased to see. And I'm also pleased to see that the bowls club is a thriving bowls club, because there is a perception amongst some that bowls is an older person's sport. That may be so, but there are many, many younger people involved in it as well. And anything that we can do to encourage people to play sport, I think, is to be welcomed. And of course, there's the social aspects of it there as well. And I was pleased to see that the Bowls Club have a membership fee for non-playing members as well. Is there anything? So can we go on to the third item, which is the Coldwell Ground Cic, please?
Yes, so you are aware, I think, that we'd previously funded St Francis Sports and Social Club to construct a community building on this site, which had planning approval, but they were unable to raise the match funding to actually deliver the project. So that grant offer was withdrawn. And now the Coldwell Ground CIC has come forward with a new proposal. It's a different design. And alongside the community building, they're also proposing to upgrade the grass pitches there and put in 3 new all-weather pitches. One will be a stadium pitch for football, one will be an all-weather pitch for hockey, and the other will be a kind of training pitch for football. So this proposal really is at quite an early stage at the moment. There's a large funding gap. They don't have planning approval. They haven't even put in the application. Some more detailed information will be needed, but in principle, we were supportive of it because it does help to achieve some of the strategic aims that have been outlined in the playing pitch study and the Hayward Heath neighbourhood plan, to actually develop that site for sport. They're suggesting some kind of management structure which is similar in a way to our relationship, I think, with Places Leisure, in that there would be Coldwell Ground CIC, who has applied for the grant, would be the landlord, and then there will be an operating company that actually does the day-to-day management of the facilities. And we need more information about that arrangement and who that company is, and at the moment that is lacking. So the funding recommendation is really very conditional on receiving more detail as the project develops. But it does utilise Section 106 receipts, which are specifically allocated to this site, and it does help to, and it would be, a big improvement on the current facilities if it can be taken forward.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one question and I'll make a comment. Actually, I'll make my comment first, then Elaine won't have to remember the question for too long. Yeah, I think in what everybody's said, first of all, this has been a high priority for the town for a good 10 years, an aspiration to have a decent outdoor sports facility. The town, as you and everybody knows, has taken many hundreds and hundreds of houses over this last recent period without the kind of infrastructure that most of us would like to have seen, and this would be a very welcome part. So I think it's important that this district council should support this project appropriately as much as it can. And I think that the caveats and some of the issues that Elaine has raised in relation to their ability to get the whole project financed and a whole myriad of other details, it's got a long way to go and it's a complex project. But I would like to see us support it as far as it is appropriate for this authority to do so. My specific question is in relation to, and I'm trying to cast my mind back about 8-10 years, the 30k for the museum. Am I right in thinking that this is a specific little pot of Section 106 money that's been unable to be spent for a long time, but that we're trying to fulfill Hayward Heath, or some people in Hayward Heath, aspiration to have a museum? So I'm just checking, is that almost kind of funded by itself by a contribution that can't be used in any other way? Thank you.
Yes, in answer to the question, that money is specifically for a museum, but the museum is not a Hayward Heath museum. It's about the history of the site and the fact that it was used, as a mental health institution, and that there was a friends group that still remains from, when it was a nursing facility. And so it's more about the history of St Francis itself than Hayward Heath more widely. But yes, it's ring-fenced specifically for that purpose.
Thank you.
Answer the question?
May I come back quickly, Chair, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. It does answer the question. I wonder if we have sought, or maybe you know, what the views are of the Hayward Heath Town Council, because obviously that has been the repository of the aspiration for a museum. Are they happy that this kind of one-off bit of money for aspiration is going to be spent in this way? And are they even aware? Thank you.
I haven't had any detailed conversations with the Town Council about the museum in particular. What I have suggested to the applicant is that they talk to the Brighton Housing Trust now, but they're the mental health charity who were interested in maybe curating an exhibition and getting more involved. So I think as it develops, it's going to need some kind of partnership with people who've got a specialism in that area, and probably at that point that will be the time to involve the Town Council, and maybe, you know, to talk about what actually goes on display in that room, because at the moment it's not been thought out in any detail.
I think the aspiration, though, Councillor Hillier, to talk with the Town Council and with any other potential interested parties is a good one, and I would urge that those communications happen in the fullness of time, and I hesitate to use that word because the time has already been ticking ever since I've been a councillor, which will soon be 12 years. This has been going on, so it is a very long-running project. So I am pleased to see this coming forward, and I'm particularly grateful for all the work that has been done on this one particularly. But there's a great deal more work to be done, particularly around governance and also around the planning approval, which will need to be submitted as well. Councillor Belsey, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to see the project coming forward. I've been aware, obviously, of the opportunity for quite some time. Obviously, it's a huge amount of money, and obviously a long way to go in respect to the funding. Also conscious of the fact that it's very new, the CIC, so no accounts, but presumably it's properly constituted and we've got no concerns on that score. So I'm keen to see it come forward. I suppose just two questions. So I know that we've also been allocating some other money to St Francis for the sort of swimming pool, sort of other community pavilion area. And I was just wondering if maybe someone could just explain how that previous project links with this one, if at all. And just obviously you've got the unsecured capital funds. Just, you know, what's the feeling, do we think, from the council officers as to the confidence behind it? Because I'm just conscious of the fact how much time this takes up, and then I'm hoping that this is not going to come back to us again in another guise. Just, and are there any particular concerns about having to use Section 106 monies by a particular time? Have we got any time constraints in that respect? Thank you.
Councillor Belsey, I think all of us, none of us, want to see this coming back again, because it's been here several times, and the obstacles that have been in the way have just been too great to be overcome, unfortunately. And there are time limits, and those time limits have expired, and we need to come to some sort of a resolution on this. So from my point of view, I've already said the governance arrangements are extremely important, and you've touched on those as well. Elaine, do you have anything to add?
Well, in terms of the constitution, the CIC has been properly constituted and registered, and also in relation to the accounts and the finances for this project. I think what we will need is, as we move forward, is proper scrutiny from colleagues in legal and finance to review all of that paperwork as the detail comes in. So I appreciate your concerns, and I think that will need to happen. In terms of the amount of money, it is a significant amount of money, but it's an £8.5 million scheme overall. So our contribution is under 20% towards the entire project. So the applicant is intending to raise a significant amount themselves, which is impressive if it can be achieved. And when I've spoken to them, they are very confident that they can do that. And they're also working to a rapid kind of timescale, and they want to press on with this as quickly as possible. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly a challenge, but they seem to be quite ambitious. And if what they can submit as it progresses meets our criteria, then I think that's a positive.
Elaine, can I just ask? I think I did raise it as well. Just how it interacts with the other project that we've already funded.
See, the thing about this project is St Francis is intending to lease all the land to the south to the Coldwell Ground Cic. So they will be entirely responsible for this project. But St Francis will retain the swimming pool and the northern part of the site. So they are still proposing to complete the works to the changing room, which we had previously funded. And actually in the update report, the Appendix B that we'll come on to in a minute, they're going to need an extension of time because they haven't signed the legal agreement with us. So that swimming pool project is delayed. But it is now entirely separate from this one. The two things will be managed by different organisations and will be, entirely separate.
Thank you. Can I just add on to my governance arrangements that need to be very carefully looked at and agreed from a legal point of view? The issue of community access. I know that has been discussed, but that is a very important part of this project as well. So that needs to be carefully worked through and ultimately agreed as one of the conditions that are detailed on page 37. But if colleagues have got no more questions, can I take you to page 29 of the report to agree the recommendations for the Burgess Hill Bowls Club? And they start on the bottom of page 28 and go on to page 29 of the report. And it's clearly laid out there, and it's a simple grant application. So I'm not proposing to read that out. If you could indicate with a green tick, please. Thank you. And that's unanimously in favour. And can I take you to page 32, please? To the recommendations for the football pitch improvements. And those are laid out fully there on the bottom of page 32. And if you could indicate with a green tick, please. And that's unanimously in favour, thank you. And then can I take you to the page 36 and page 37, where the recommendation of the assessment group recommends that the Cabinet Grants Panel awards a maximum of £1,450,000 £147.34 to the Coldwell Ground Cic, which is made up of, and then it lists the amounts from different projects that have been taken, that have been constructed in Hayward's Heath. And I do want to read: the release of Section 106 contributions is made subject to the following special conditions, and the submission of the following detailed information to be reviewed and approved: governance arrangements, ownership and management of the site, capital project costs and tender documentation, operational company constitution, viable business plan and budget, including pricing structure for community use. A copy of the lease agreement between the Coldwell Ground Cic and the St Francis Social and Sports Club, the planning approval for the project, match funding / loan repayments, and evidence the project can be funded in its entirety by the 1st of April 2023. And finally, the project delivery schedule and evidence that the project can be completed within 36 months of project funding being obtained. And on receipt of the above, provided to the satisfaction of the head of corporate resources, a formal grant agreement outlining the full terms and conditions of the award be issued for signature by both parties. Can you indicate your agreement with a green tick, please, colleagues? Councillor Hillier, did you have a question, or was it just a green tick?
It was a question or a suggestion. It was in relation to those museum monies and also the comments that you helpfully made, and whether it's appropriate that there should be a condition that the town council is happy that this aspiration doesn't cut across its own aspirations for a museum. Because I know that the town council for many, many years, certainly since 2012, has wanted to have some form of museum, and I suspect this might be the only pot of money in town. And I just think, out of courtesy, if nothing else, they should be, we should approach them. But I'm happy to leave that in your hands, as you have greater experience of these matters than I have.
I think technically, Councillor Hillier, we've all indicated our acceptance of these conditions. So we've indicated our acceptance unanimously, but I think that you have very clearly reiterated the point that the town council does need to be consulted on this issue, and obviously we would like them to be involved in this. Is that a satisfactory way of getting around it, that is specifically minuted?
I'm happy with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, that's agreed then. Can we move on to Appendix B then, please, which is a summary of Section 106 contributions that have been awarded. Is there anything you want to talk through with that summary, Elaine?
I think the recommendations are probably, I mean, I can run through them quickly if you like. I think probably the main one is around the Hayward Heath Tennis Club, but perhaps, I mean, the first three are in relation to the Anstey Village Centre Trust, which is effectively the building's constructed, it's just for the car park and so on, which they're going to get some, they need to go back to planning to get some alterations, so this just gives them a bit more time to do that. Anstey Sports and Social Club, again, there was no deadline agreed by Cabinet. The award was made by Cabinet, but there was no deadline put as to when the project had to be completed. So I think it is helpful to actually have a deadline. So that's introducing a new deadline. In terms of Sheddingdean, again, this project has got a huge fundraising task ahead of them, and which they've been struggling with. So they're going to put in revised plans, and this again will just give them more time to do that. The recommendation F is around St Francis, so that's what we spoke about earlier in relation to the swimming pool. And this recommendation to extend the condition is subject to agreement from Lewes District Council that they will also give us an extension of time, because half of the award came from Lewes. So if you agree to this, that will give me authority to go back to Lewes to renegotiate our grant agreement with them. Hayward's Heath Rugby Football Club. Again, this is a fundraising issue primarily. They've raised a huge amount of money themselves, and I think they're about £500,000 short now. They've had some updated costs, and unfortunately, with all of these things, with inflation as it is, things are always just a little out of reach. And I think they're going to need our support to help with the fundraising, because again, it's a council-owned site. So we'll work with them on that. The cricket club project hasn't been delivered, so I'm recommending that grant is now withdrawn in Crawley Down. The Hayward's Heath Tennis Club, I think at the previous panel meeting, I told you that they'd come back with a revised proposal, which they have now done, and they've got detailed quotes and so on for all of the work. So rather than knocking down the existing clubhouse, they're going to refurbish it, which is a more economical solution, really, and affordable. So this is something where actually, if they get the green light, they should now just be able to go ahead with the work, subject to planning approval, if that's even required. And to be honest, I think because they're keeping the footprint the same, chances are they won't need planning. So this will hopefully now just progress and be delivered within the year, subject to having an agreement with our estates team, who have been involved the whole way through, so they're aware of this. Clarion Futures, this is the spring COPs improvements, and we've now come to some other arrangement with Clarion, so that grant is going to be withdrawn. Mid Sussex District Scouts were given a grant to build on Barn Cottage Recreation Ground and build a new facility, and the legal agreements are taking some time to negotiate, so that's why this project needs more time, and they also need to continue with their own fundraising. And the Sussex Clubs for Young People project is dependent on the Barn Cottage, the new building going up in Barn Cottage. So I've tried to just bring the two deadlines in line with one another, because those projects work in tandem. So that's it from me, unless you've got any questions.
Good, thank you very much. First of all, we did give the Crawley Down Cricket Club an extension, as you said, because of COVID, and that hasn't happened yet. So you've outlined that. I think Spring Cops is a bit like it's the East Grinstead version of the St Francis site. It's gone on for many, many years. And I am pleased, though, that officers are working with Clarion Futures on some sort of alternative provision there. And of course, the Scouts at Barn Cottage is a very important project. And I really would like to see the legals on that concluded as soon as possible. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Or can we agree these by a show of green ticks? In that case, I'll show a green tick. And that's unanimously in favour. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And can we move on to item 9, please? The Independent Retailers Grant Scheme Proposed Grants Awards. Will, are you introducing this? Good.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, as we say, what we present today is our Independent Retailers Grant Scheme. A quick background to the fund is that West Sussex districts and boroughs were allocated £80,000 each to provide both retail training and grants. So as part of this, Mid Sussex joined a joint procurement to provide the training element of this scheme across the county via the online service now known as the West Sussex Retail Hub. The remaining allocation of £73,000 has been allocated towards these grants, which are up to £4,000 for independent retailers within the district in order to improve either their interior or exterior environments or to improve their business operation and competitiveness as laid out within the report. One further criteria was that businesses had to engage with the aforementioned online training before any grant funding is received. So what we're presenting today is 23 applications for consideration, all of which we are recommending for approval. There are 4 lower allocations recommended within the report. These are for the Ounce Stores Limited, AL Nails Salon, the Rocking Horse Emporium and the Digital Cafe. The latter 2 of which were due to incorrect match funding proposals within the allocations. However, as noted in paragraph 18, the application for AL Nails Salon was submitted incomplete and did not note any match funding. We have now confirmed with the business that the total project cost is in fact £2,000, and therefore our recommendation stands at £1,500 for that application. For the application of Ounce Stores Limited, there were some items within their application which were deemed ineligible under this scheme, most notably the purchase of stock and a new van for the business. Our recommendation removes these items from their application. However, we have been in contact with the store owner and we've signposted them to our upcoming round of the Micro Business Grant Scheme, where those items would be eligible if they wish to submit those under that project when it goes live. In addition to those 2 applications, with the Chair's permission, I'd also like to request a slight amendment to the application from Linfield Coffee Works. They'd asked to increase their grant allocation from, as listed, £2,812 to £3,112.50, owing to some amendments in their application, which replaces the purchase of the cooling unit and with the purchase of further shelving and what they deem a self-service coffee unit to improve their retail operation within the store. So if that's approved, this would change the total allocation within the grant paper to £69,353.14. And then just lastly, we'd like to ask the panel to consider the communications plan set out in paragraph 21, which just sets out how the team would like to sort of share and promote the success of the scheme going forward, which we would then report back to this board. So if the members of the panel have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Good, thank you very much, Will. Are there any questions, gentlemen? Councillor Belsey, I suspect you're going to be asking the same question that I am, coming from East Grinstead.
Well, Chairman, thank you, Will, for such a detailed delivery, and thank you for all the work done. And I know when you're dealing with lots of different applications, there must be a lot of paperwork and to keep on top of everything. And thank you for that process. And I don't have any objections, by the way, to the grants that you've put forward. I suppose what I'm disappointed about is the geographies of the locations, and I welcome everybody who's eligible to apply for grants, but just a bit disappointed there aren't so many from the north of the district, and I'm just wondering why that might be. So it'd be quite useful to know what work officers did across the district to promote the scheme. I noticed there's 4,000, or as you've said, there's a balance left. but I'm just, and I've wondered whether we could maybe particularly be looking at some of the potential ones from East Grinstead or on the north of the district that to utilise that remaining funds. Just what do you think? Why do you think there are less grants going to the north? I can understand obviously the focus on Burgess Hill Town Centre, don't get me wrong, but what could be done differently to try to get more engagement from an East Grinstead perspective in particular? Thank you.
Yeah, so just I suppose on the first point of how we promoted the scheme, there wasn't any bias towards any area. We promoted the scheme via our social media platforms, via our business newsletter within the team, and via the sort of Mid-Sussex social media profiles. Alongside that, we shared details of the scheme with all 3 business associations in Hayward, Heath, East Grinstead and Burgess Hill. There was no particular drive within each area. Obviously, it's worth noting the training available does cover the entire district, but unfortunately, we weren't able to control where in which the applications came from. It's just unfortunate that in this case, applications have been made from, most notably Burgess Hill, as we mentioned in the report, with only 1 application coming from East Grinstead. Going forward, we can obviously, with perhaps the micro business grant scheme, which is coming up, we could push applications from areas that weren't so much affected by this. But failing that, no, I think the promotion that we did captured everywhere in the district.
I think, Will, thank you for that. And clearly the communication program that was undertaken resonated in Burgess Hill and in Hayward's Heath to an extent, and it reminds me of a previous round of grant funding that we had specifically for East Grinstead a few years ago, and it wasn't all allocated in the end, which is unfortunate. But as you quite rightly say, we can only allocate funding to applications that are submitted. And if people don't ask for the funds, we can't give them, because it is, at the end of the day, taxpayer money, and it needs to be distributed according to need. And I should actually declare that I am a member of the East Grinstead Executive Committee of the East Grinstead Business Association, as is Councillor Belsey. But that has no bearing on this at all, really, because neither of us were involved in any of those discussions. Councillor Hillier, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman, and I endorse the comments you made. That saves me saying half of what I was going to say. 2 questions. At bullet point 9 on page 47, we talk about the grants of 500 for pop-up shop opportunities. It looks like that hasn't been any take-up of that, which is kind of okay, but I just wondered if you had any comment around that, thanks, because it seemed like potentially a good thing to help startups. And the other one is with regards to the spending in Burgess Hill. I think we all welcome anything and everything that supports the town centre in Burgess Hill. I'd just like comfort that the shop fronts involved are not ones that may undergo any change should major redevelopment happen anytime soon. Does that question make sense? Thank you.
Yeah, so just to take your first point first, with regards to the pop-up shop opportunities, obviously we did, as I mentioned previously, promote this through those channels that I mentioned previously. While that wasn't taken up explicitly, I believe one application from Sweet Skate is developing pop-up opportunities. However, not through that separate 500. I believe they were looking to allocate a little bit more funding towards that. So there is that one at the very least pushing it, but that's obviously an initiative that we did promote. With regards to your second question around Burgess Hill, we can certainly take that away and check, but I believe in that situation, the applications which are close to that development were in store in regards to improving business operations, so wouldn't be affected. But we can take that away and check before application if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Belsey, is that a new hand?
Yeah, just thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on the previous point, just about the balance. And I know it says that we're in discussions potentially with other districts and boroughs, but also there's the possibility it could go on to our micro business grant scheme. Just my personal preference would strongly be to be able to keep the money for mid-Sussex businesses where it was originally intended, if at all possible. So I would urge officers, if they can, to try to find a solution that would allow us to keep the money within our district. Thank you.
Good point, thank you. Can we move to the recommendations on page 46? And they are to consider and agree the funding requests for all the applications as set out in table 1, and noting the verbal update that Will has given us in terms of those few changes, and B, to consider and agree the proposed communications plan outlined in the report. If you could indicate with a green tick, please. Thank you, and that is unanimous. And if we could please go on to item 10. Will, I think that's you again.
Yep, so just, I suppose, a brief summary on this report. The report is just to note the outcomes and impacts of the grants awarded to businesses as part of the Council's COVID-19 Recovery Grant Scheme. This report notes the 42 business awards which were granted and details a breakdown of their businesses by geography, sector, and the type of project supported. Also included in the report is a number of testimonials from some of the businesses which were supported through this scheme. The panel is simply asked to note this review, however, to agree the communications plan, similar to the previous agenda item in paragraph 17, which proposes how the team again will share and promote the success of the scheme and the funding awarded.
Good, thank you. And just to preempt a question from Councillor Belsey, on page 58, there's a very useful bar chart showing the total number of grants awarded by geographic location. 24% from Hayward's Heath, 14 from Burgess Hill, and 12 from East Grinstead. And what is particularly pleasing about this bar chart is the wide spread across the district of applications. So I think that this grant recovery scheme has actually achieved what it set out to achieve in terms of supporting businesses across the district. So I was really pleased to see that bar chart. Are there any questions, colleagues? I don't see any, so members of the panel are requested to note the review. Sorry, Councillor Hillier, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll be honest, it's not a question. It's just me just wanting to make a statement again.
Go ahead.
And to Ambassador Will Hawkins, I think the way that his team and the grants and benefits teams have dealt with the whole business grants through COVID has been exemplary. I've spoken with lots of businesses from outside of mid-Sussex who look enviously at the speed, but actually it's not just about the speed. The most important thing is actually you have been so careful to ensure that the money is spent where it should be. Other authorities, sadly, we hear about have just dished out the funds just to get them out of a bank account. So I actually just wanted to take this opportunity to compliment you and your colleagues on that whole way you've dealt with this grants process. And as per the previous one, I certainly welcome the thing around the communications. I think you deserve to shout about it, and also it helps, hopefully other businesses to keep an eye on what we're offering in terms of grants, so that we continue to get a widespread of offering across the whole district. And I guess The last one is a wider comment. I'm not sure if Emma wanted to count it. It's great that we're getting feedback from these, and we try and do this in all of our grants process. And I just wonder whether colleagues it would be helpful when applicants come back for a repeat grant, or that previous grant recipients come back, whether it just notes whether they've failed to or whether they've complied with our requirement to provide an end of grant report. It doesn't seem a great deal to ask for them to do so, and I'm not sure how the compliance is, but yeah, that's me done, but well done, and thank you, and I'm very supportive of the recommendations, or the note, willing to note it.
Thank you. Can we indicate with a green tick, please? Yeah. And thank you, that's unanimous. And I apologize for my delay, gentlemen. There was a random box popped up on my screen, but it's now gone. And yes, Councillor Hillier, your comment about organisations giving an end of grant funding feedback is very important and will be critical to future grant applications, I'm sure. Officers, is there anything else that needs to be discussed here? I don't think so. No. What I do want to use, Elaine, you have your hand up.
Oh, it was a minor thing, but I should have mentioned it earlier in relation to Appendix B of the item that I covered. It said that Skeins Hill Millennium Village Centre were in receipt of an award of £100,000. It was actually only £2,000. So can you just make a note in the minutes that was a typo? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, I just want to reiterate Councillor Hillier's thanks to the business team and also to the communities team for the huge amount of work that has gone into all of these applications that have been put forward today. These are some very big projects that are being dealt with by small teams of people. And there have been changes in the business team, and there have been changes in the legal teams as well. So Emma Sheridan and Nathan Spilstead, thank you very much for your team's superb effort in bringing all of this to us today. And I would like to add my thanks to that. So with that, I will close the meeting, and if you could please stay in position for 30 seconds until the live streaming has ended. Thank you.